The Falcons O-line better step up if they have any chance of beating the Eagles.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs, who are helping you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. And so, guys, if you don't know me, I'm your very humble host, Aaron Freeman. Been covering the Falcons for far too long. Far too long. Formerly at FalcFans.com, RIP, still going strong in this illustrious podcast. And I thank each and every one of you that go strong with me as everydayers of this pod. That means you make it your first watch or first listen each and every day. And if you want to become an everydayer, all you got to do is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So today I am joined by none other than Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And we're going to be answering what one listener is wondering: did the Falcons get it right by firing Arthur Smith instead of Terry Fontenot? Will Kirk Cousins shed the narrative that he shrinks in primetime? But first, we got to start with the biggest key to victory in this Week 2 Monday night matchup between the Falcons and Eagles. And this is not going to be the last time that Jarvis and I talk about this upcoming matchup, because we do have an Atlanta football party coming for you Monday on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Make sure you make that show, your first or second listen, first, second, after Locked On Falcons, we don't mind, as long as you listen to both, but make sure you subscribe.
We're all family.
Yeah. All YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. But Jarvis, when we get together, we usually talk trenches. So I'm very curious if that's the direction you're going to go when it comes to what you need to see from this Falcons team to walk away with a win in week 2 against the Eagles.
Yes, absolutely. Because here's the thing, man. I think the main thing that we got to understand is that there was porous blocking across the board. Now I know Caleb McGarry stands out because a lot of times we understand what edge guys, a lot of people, know who TJ Watt is and what he brings to the table. He is a sack artist. He, understands how to wreck games, and that's what he did against the Atlanta Falcons, and specifically against Caleb McGarry in those one-on-one situations. Why he was in one-on-one that much? That's a question that needs to be answered by Zach Robinson. And I think that, to kind of move down the line, Chris Lindstrom didn't have his best game. Drew Dahlman had his issues. Oh my gosh. Yes. Matt Bergeron, he had his issues, and Jake even had his issues as well. So, obviously there was some more than others, but you just look at moments throughout that game, it was just sloppy play when it comes to not being cohesive up front, passing off a guy when that's your man, and then thinking a guy's gonna come and all he's doing is step up in the line and picking up the running back coming out of the backfield, and then the guy that you were supposed to block ends up putting a hit on Kirk Cousins. So I think that their offensive line has to do what they need to do in order to be able to keep Kirk upright, regardless of whether you feel like he's hurt or not. I for one don't think he's hurt. I just think it's more so rust, mental, and porous blocking. I think a combination of all those three things is the reason why we saw what we saw on Sunday. So yeah, they have another big test. We understand what Philadelphia brings to the table up front. We got big Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a real party if they don't get it right in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you, Jarvis. This has been a thing I've been harping on for weeks, if not months, on this pod. And some of my listeners, not all, some of my listeners have been taking exception with that because I haven't been as quick to praise this offensive line as a top 5 unit. And it's largely because I think if they are a top 5 unit, they would prove it in these first couple of games against a front like Pittsburgh, against Philadelphia, against Kansas City, all of whom are arguably the 3 best D lines that they're going to face this season. And if they're a top 5 unit, they shouldn't have, again, it's not to sit here and say that you're never going to get beat, because those guys are going to get their wins, but it shouldn't look, I think, the way that you're talking about it, where it looks like everybody's getting it and it's a real struggle. And to me, given Kirk's limitations, right? Kirk was already not the most mobile quarterback before the injury. And this is what I've been talking about again for months. After the injury, that's not going to get better. And certainly at the beginning of the season, as he works his way back, it's, the hope is that we will see a little bit more. We'll see more of what we saw on that touchdown throw to Kyle Pitts, where he rolled outside the pocket and found an open Kyle Pitts there later in the season. But you're not going to have too many of those plays each and every week. And it's really important for the offensive line to do their job and give Kirk those clean pockets from which to throw from. I think that the interceptions he had were mistakes, poor decisions by Kirk on both accounts. But I do think he's less inclined to make those mistakes if he has a cleaner pocket to throw to. And I think this week is going to be really important, because I think the strength of the pass rush at this point is the interior. Jalen Carter has been a player I've been harping on. Like, this is going to be the key, and that's going to be a lot of Matthew Bergeron. It's going to be a lot of Chris Lindstrom. And Jalen Carter is the type of player that can make both of those guys look really bad because of his unique blend of size, power, speed, quickness, and all those various things. And so if they can block him effectively, again, he's going to get his on a couple of times. That's what good players do. They make plays, but you can't let him take over the game in the ways that we saw TJ Watt and other players kind of taking over the game last week against Pittsburgh.
And you help that by everybody chipping in from a blocking standpoint. We were talking before we got started, I was talking about how some of the things that kind of stood out on film is just when you look at guys like Drake London on that screenplay going into the going in the red zone. If Drake just holding on to his block for maybe a half a second longer, Bijan squeaks through and gets into the end zone. Or when Kyle Pitts, they were on the in Pittsburgh on Pittsburgh side of the 50-yard line going in, it was Minkah Fitzpatrick coming down, knifing in to make the play. All Kyle Pitts had to do just get in between he and the runner, which was Bijan Robinson at the time. We probably still be talking about another touchdown, another big play, because we know what those chunk plays do. They set you up for, other big plays down the road or later on in the game. Maybe we would have seen the play action off of in that same look later on if they would have had some success on that play. So, because a lot of things, you talk about different scenarios and and one thing that can kill an offensive rhythm and play calling and what you call is down and distance. Down and distance will change your whole game plan. It can wreck it. And when you have a scenario where you're behind the chains or constantly behind the chains, whether it be from missed blocks, fumble snaps, interceptions, all of those things kind of compound themselves into bigger issues. So for me, I feel like, Kyle's going to have to make that block. If he's going to be in there, you got to make that block. There's no excuse. Drake London, if he's going to be in there, you got to make that block, because we know this offense has to be able to run the football to have some success, man, because we saw what sitting back there, throwing the football, 25, 22, 25, 30 times a game. We just understand coming into the season, we knew that that's not this offensive line's strong suit. Their strong suit is running the football. So if they have success running the football, I feel like the rest will take care of themselves as far as keeping Kirk upright.
Yeah. And so we'll see if the pieces around Kirk can, do their jobs to help him out. But Kirk's got to help himself out. And, one of the big questions surrounding Kirk is his performance in primetime. Is that a fair criticism of Kirk? And whether or not he's going to step up, we'll break that down as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. Now, we know the NFL spent their summer trying to find the right professionals to fit their roster, and you may be looking to spend your fall doing the same for your small business, but it's so much easier for you. You don't have to sweat it out in the Georgia heat because you got LinkedIn Jobs. They have the tools that are going to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just any old job board. They're going to help you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but just might be open for the perfect role. In any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't use other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn and join the 2.5 million small businesses that use LinkedIn for hiring by posting your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And guys, I want to tell you about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, and the latest great offer that they have for you through September 22nd, right? Just a couple of days, a little more than a week. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And with that YouTube TV base plan, you can watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account, a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. So the clock is ticking. So head on over to FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook and go check out the line for this Monday night matchup between the Falcons and Eagles. The Eagles are currently favored by 6.5 points. You feel like the Falcons will get their redemption, or will the Eagles embarrass them again in prime time? Check it out at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. So, guys, continuing today's Locked On Falcons, myself, Aaron Freeman, Jarvis Davis at Locked On Sports Atlanta, and we're talking about the big primetime matchup on Monday Night Football. I can't even think of the last time the Falcons were on Monday Night Football. It feels like it was ancient time ago. It's probably like 2 or 3 years ago, but it just feels like it was forever ago. And we'll see if, the Falcons can do us well, but, we got a day of football between now and then. And if you want to get, geared up for Sunday's action, make sure you check out Locked On NFL, the new look Locked On NFL that's getting you geared up for this weekend's action and getting you geared up every single day with the biggest stories around the NFL. 2 shows daily, one by Tyler Rowland, one by Tony Wiggins. Check it out on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So, Jarvis, the narrative is going to be primetime Kirk is pretty bad. But I went and did some research because, we like to do research on this podcast.
Of course.
Kirk's actually won 3 out of his last 4 games on Monday Night Football. Now, the one loss happened to be on the road against the Philadelphia Eagles in 2022, and they lost that game 24-7. And then he's played the Eagles twice on Monday Night Football, both of them losses, one in 2017 when he was still in Washington, one in 2022. And the numbers, 3 interceptions in one of those games, that most recent 2022 game, although he did have 3 touchdowns in the 2017 game. But, you look at his numbers, not great, 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 79 passer rating, career passer rating on Monday Night Football. That's just in those Eagles games. And then career passer rating on Monday Night Football, 86, which is not great, just kind of middling performance. So clearly Kirk hasn't consistently performed in spotlight, but, Minnesota was able to kind of shake the label of primetime Kirk being bad the last couple of years. Do you feel like the Falcons will be able to shake that label? And what do you expect from Kirk Cousins? And what do you need to see from Kirk Cousins so that we don't have another notch on the Kirk can't get the job done in primetime?
To be honest with you, man, I think that they got to simplify this thing, not to the point where they're being obvious, where, hey, they're in pistol, we're going to run the ball. Hey, we're in shotgun, we're going to slang this bad boy. So I think that coming up with a game plan as far as from identity, right? Because I go back to when Rob was, talking about, in the OTAs and then coming into training camp, you're talking about identity and who this Falcons team is going to be. And he said he wants that to happen organically. And for me, I don't know who this team is. I can probably maybe start to come up with one for the defense. Hey, y'all might be bend a little bit, but y'all gonna be that bend but don't break type defense and come up with big plays when you need them. Oh yeah, I can get with that. But the offense, I don't know what this offense is going to be. I don't know. I have no idea who they are one game in. So, and a lot of times that's kind of hard to do, right? Because you need a certain sample size to be able to come up with making an assessment of who this team is going to be. But I feel like if they can establish themselves up front, like we talked about earlier, I feel like that can help Kirk out because, and hopefully that one game of live football can say, hey, all right, now that I got that out my system, now let's see if I can get back to some normalcy. Like, because we know that, the last time Kirk played, he was balling out. He was putting up some really good numbers, and he hasn't played since hadn't played since October of last year. And we think about it from that aspect, okay, you got that one game out your way, live football, you got film to go look at, you got to figure out what you can do to get better. Hey, Zach, here's what I feel that can work, help me, help you. This what works for me. Here's a, maybe we can implement some of this, or here's what worked for me in Minnesota. We had a lot of success with that. I feel like some of that type of conversation can help, get rid of this whole Kirk can't do it in prime time.
Yeah, I think that's some great points, Jarvis. It was just disappointing because my expectations were always like, oh, they're going to put their best foot forward against Pittsburgh, and then maybe they might come down a little bit against Philadelphia, just because the Pittsburgh game, they had weeks, if not months, to really prepare and not playing the preseason. It's like, you're sitting there thinking like, hey, Zach Robinson's, in the lab cooking up some stuff, and he's going to be, and what he's going to be able to show that first week. And then, we were texting during the game, and obviously we've talked about it a bunch of times since then. And it was just such a letdown to see like this is what you were cooking up in the lab. Like, I don't want to taste this food.
Go back.
If that's what you're cooking
Try
up.
again.
Yeah. So I think I bring that up because it's just like it's a challenge to kind of have to be like, you get an extra day of prep, but it's a challenge to have to do that in the middle of the season where it's just like, as you say, like, what is this identity? And I just remember in 2017 when Sark came in and the Falcons got off to that 3-0 start and the offense was looking pretty good. And then they hit that kind of slide where I think they lost like 3 or 4 games straight or something like that. And it was just like, at that point, you needed to go back to basics and figure out what you were, but you had already sort of established something positive that you could look back on in those first 3 games. And it's like, what is the positive thing that the Falcons have to figure out? And they have to kind of figure that out on the fly. And of course, it's going to be a challenge against this Eagles team on Monday Night Football. And of course, we know that the Falcons always seem to, rise to the occasion when they have the national spotlight. So many times we've been, watching this team, whether it's last year against London, where the whole world is watching us and the Falcons.
Hold on, man. Come on, man. Like, do you have to be that petty? Now I see what people are talking about. I understand. Oh, petty Aaron. Where is petty Aaron? He's always so petty. Optimistic Aaron. Aaron is optimistic. And I was like, man, who is this? Who are they talking about? Aaron is not that petty. Who is this man? Dude, you're being very petty right now. And to be honest with you, man, I understand. I get it. Because here's the thing, man. When it comes to what the Falcons can do in 2024, all that other stuff that happened prior, like they damn sure don't need to be talking about it or referencing or wondering about it, especially and specifically Kirk too. Hey, he don't need to be talking about how he's been, or even thinking about how he's performed on primetime games. He need to be thinking about like, okay, they don't have TJ Watt, so that means I probably got a chance to be able to get this ball off. Or, hey, I had a lot of success in doing play action. What helps play action work? Running the football and having success with it. And then, coming back to it in a timely manner. So, you can be able to take advantage of whatever coverage or a man coverage that you're probably going to get because you got an extra man in the box because you've been having so much success, running the football. So for me, I feel like, man, that all of the Falcons can't play in prime time, all that stuff is out the door, man, because it's 2024. Raheem Morris is the head coach. Yeah, Matt Ryan is not walking through that door. Devontae Freeman not walking through that door. Some people probably don't want him to walk through that door. Julio Jones not here. It's just, this is a different team, man. And when you think about all of these guys that are coming together, even the guys that were already on the team, you still running a new offense. You still got a first-year play caller, and a lot of people are calling for his head already. I'm just like, man, come on, man. Like, it's one game. It's one game. So here's another opportunity for this Falcons team to prove, hey, that they belong, or they are real contenders in this division, because I know the Saints played against the Panthers, but they put up a 30-piece. What was the final score? What, 40? I think and it was like 30.
Yeah, like 43-10 or something.
Yeah, 43 points, like 40 points against the Panthers, right? So it's in Tampa. It's like, hey, don't forget about us either. So when you have those two teams proving that they're going to be here for this division, you have to figure out a way to prove that you are in that conversation as well. And Monday night is going to be a prime opportunity, pun intended, to do so.
Fair enough, Jarvis. You make some excellent points. They have a golden opportunity to change the narrative. I don't fall back into my old ways of what I was literally about doing on the podcast. You're right. You're absolutely right. I appreciate you calling me out on that.
Yes.
They have, fresh start. We got a new week. I'm letting it go. But we'll see what the Falcons do on Monday Night Football. But one thing, I don't know how to segue to this, but I guess we're going to continue to be paid. But we got a listener who's basically doing the same thing where you're talking about firing somebody, and he's wondering, did we fire the right person based off of that week 1 game where Arthur Smith and the Pittsburgh Steelers got their win? Did Terry Fontenot deserve to be shown the door there? And we'll see what Jarvis has to say about that as we wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. Now, guys, Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active users, because it's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And unlike on other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. Pick more or less on up to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. And if you're looking to get in on some action because, certain sports books aren't available in your state, guess what? Prize Picks is. And withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. And you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. And maybe this week you want to continue to ride that hot hand with Bijan Robinson, more or less 64 yards rushing. Check it out by downloading Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL, and you'll get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. So, Jarvis, we're talking about, a brand new era of Falcons football, changing the narrative and whatnot. But I was curious to see what you thought of this question. I had a listener in the Discord join it in the link below in the description by the name of Super. And he basically asked the question: is it too early to tell, but is there an argument to be made that we fired the wrong guy? Our drafting during the Terry Fontenot era regime has been filled with whiffs, reaches, and questionable decisions. And depending on how Zach Robinson progresses this year, I think the argument could be made that we fired the wrong guy. Hindsight is 2020, but it's hard to look at the Lions and not wish we had picked Brad Holmes instead, although the Stafford trade did jumpstart the rebuilding by a good bit. Better question would be, would a Terry firing be warranted if the team underperforms again this season? Jarvis, your thoughts?
Wow, that is it's a lot of layers to this, because if you're asking me, should the Falcons have fired Arthur Smith or Terry Fontenot, the clear question is yes, they should have fired. They should have fired Arthur Smith. They did the right thing. If you're talking about either or, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're talking about should they have fired both of them, I'm not going to sit up there and say that at this moment, the way this roster is currently constructed. No, I'm not going to say that, because who questioned the roster? Coming into this season, right? Like all the offensive weapons, veteran offensive line across the board, all your starters returning. You got multiple running backs that can run the rock. One of them make a potential, game-changing type guy, right? And be a big play player for you. Drake London, even without having a 1,000-yard season, still has shown production. Even though I disagree with, that pick. Kyle Pitts, that's the one. If you want to harp on that one being the highest drafted tight end. Like, oh, I still ain't seen anything. Still haven't seen anything with a new quarterback. You can probably start to make your case or build a case against that. But for me, I think overall, I think Terry has done a fine job. I don't think he deserves to get fired or should have been fired along with Arthur Smith, because I feel like Arthur Smith he had proven time and time again that he wasn't ready to be a head coach in the NFL. I'm sorry. That's just me. Terry Fontenot, albeit he made some decisions that were questionable to me, but I feel like he had done things, just from a salary cap standpoint and being in position to go out and go trade for a guy like Matthew Judon or go out and sign a guy like Simmons. Those guys talked about how this roster was built, what the culture is. And when you think about roster construction, that credit goes to the general manager 99% of the time. So if guys are wanting to come to play here because of people who are on the team, it's hard for me to make a case to say that guy needed to be fired or he should be on the hot seat to be fired if this season goes awry. I think that, with all those things being said, I feel Terry Fontenot should be in a good spot. I'm not saying that he should be fat and happy and be like, oh man, everything all good, because if we continue to see what we saw, on Sunday at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, man, like this, it can get ugly really quickly, man, because not everybody was excited about Raheem Morris. I know you and I were. Excited for him to get an opportunity to be a head coach again, but a lot of people who weren't. So I think that if they don't get it right and how they win or lose going forward needs to be fixed, right? Because the end result can be eased a little bit if you're saying, hey, the game comes down to one big play or something like that, but that's not how they lost. They lost where it was just sloppy play throughout the game. And you only can point to really 2 series on offense where they actually look like an NFL offense.
Yeah. I'll probably surprise a couple people. I don't think Terry should be fired or anything like that. I have a similar mindset as you. Like, right. For me, again, a lot of it to me depends on how the rest of the season goes, right? But you're right. Like, I don't think the Falcons offense or the Falcons talent and the roster is as good as some people think it is, but like, it's not a bad roster by any means.
No, not at all. Yeah.
And so like, this roster is more than good enough that this team should have some whatever version of success that is winning season, playoff, whatever. They certainly have that capability. So it's hard for me to be like, Terry's the problem. But at the same time, like, I think Terry does potentially deserve criticism if the team doesn't win this season. Sure. Do I think it's going to be like, oh, Terry put together this terrible roster? No, to me, if the Falcons don't succeed this year, to me, that's probably going to be more like, even though he's our guy, like Raheem and this coaching staff didn't do hold up their end of the bargain. So I think to me, my biggest concern and question mark with Terry is, I don't know what problems Terry has really solved as a general manager here in Atlanta. Like, I feel like he's made a lot of temporary fixes where he's brought in some of these free agents that are basically going to be, the Kirk Cousinses, the David Onyemadas, the Jesse Bates that are, should help this team have success. But in terms of, has he solved their long-term quarterback conversation? We don't know, because we won't really find out about if Michael Penix is the answer until 3 or 5 years from now. Is this offensive line fixed? The 3 players that have gotten paid are 3 guys that Thomas Dimitroff brought in. The 2 guys that Terry brought in were still kind of up in the air. Like, they're solid players, but like, are they long-term solutions? Jarvis, you and I talk about the pass rush all the time. Like, Judon's a great pickup. Grady, David Onyemata are good players, but those aren't long-term solutions to their pass rush problems. And you're still looking at Zach Harrison and Arnold Bichetti, and like, are these guys the long-term solution? So that's where I say, like, we haven't seen Terry solve problems yet. And it's just like, to me, that requires patience. And so I don't know if we're going to have the answers to those questions by the end of this season. So for me, sitting here today, now, again, maybe we'll be having a very different conversation in 3 months, but sitting here today, I don't feel like we should be ready to push Terry out the door just because the team doesn't have success. But certainly I do think that will open him up for a lot more criticism based off of some of the moves he's made so far.
And to be honest with you, like, it's very incomplete. I agree with you, because when you think about Arne Ebiketie, second round pick, you think about Troy Anderson, second round pick, you think about, the guys that we talk about being solid, rock solid, they were drafted by the previous regime, Thomas Dimitrov. So, and then Michael Penix. We know how important quarterbacks are. They will get you fired, and there's been a delay put on that because of the situation that they have. Because I feel like if, let's just say, what if scenario, throw this out. If Kirk Cousins stinks it up this year, I wholeheartedly think that Terry Fontenot needs to, I'm not going to say be fired, but I'm saying that it needs to start warming up, because you can't sit up here and say, hey, man, I know he stunk, or he wasn't the player that he was before I gave him $90 million guaranteed, but look at that little shiny toy I got sitting over here on the bench. It can't be that. That can't save you, So I feel like in order for us to not be having this warm conversation for Terry Fontenot, I feel like Kirk has to work. And if Kirk doesn't work, then I feel like you can start circling the wagons and saying, hey, man, who have you hit on? I can give him Bijan, 1,400, yards from 1,400 yards from the line of scrimmage last year. That was very productive, even though the offense was putrid overall. But so, and I think that even speaks to his capabilities even more, that he was able to give you that production, specifically when the ball was turned around and handed off to him. So I feel like, yeah, man, like Kirk is the one thing that I feel that if it doesn't go right, Terry can be in that conversation once the season is over with.
Yeah, we'll see how it all plays out. But super, even though I have been certainly pushing this rhetoric, I don't think anybody needs to get fired based off of week one, right?
No, not at
all. We'll see what the rest of the season goes. Week one to me is more of a wake up call. Going back to what Jarvis is saying, like, guys got to start doing their jobs, and that's the promise of what this regime is going to bring. And so hopefully we'll start to see guys do their jobs, and that will continue on Monday Night Football against the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll of course have another show between now and then here on Locked On Falcons, and maybe we'll take a deep dive into if I get to sit in those game plan rooms, some of the things that I might be throwing out as suggestions, just mere suggestions for Zach Roberts. Zach, you don't have to listen to me, but there's just a couple of suggestions that I have after watching.
Does. So I mean, what I'm saying?
Week one game. So we'll probably get into that on Sunday night and Monday on your regular podcast feeds before that Monday Night Football game. So make sure you continue to make Locked On Falcons your first listen. Check out Locked On Sports Atlanta. I'm sure we'll be talking a lot more about this Monday morning on the Atlanta Football Party with myself, Jarvis, Tanisha Batiste, and Tori McElhaney. And of course, we got lots of other things going on around Georgia sports. Braves, Bulldogs. Hawk season inching closer as we there. Something in Atlanta sports will come to save you at some point.
Yes, somebody. Yes,
yeah, somebody. And maybe it's the Falcons on Monday night. So we will see what happens. And go check out Locked On Sports Atlanta to keep you covered for the rest of the local sports teams. And check out Locked On NFL. The new version of Locked On NFL. It's all part of Locked On Podcast Network, guys. Your team every day.